Welcome to the 5th East Asia Film Festival Ireland 2021. Thank you for joining us for this special conversation with directors Hien Mai and Tim Ellrich, whose documentary Mind Vietnam premieres in Ireland as part of this year's festival. I'm Anne O'Brien. Hien Mai and Tim Ellrich, welcome to the festival. Hien, can I begin, Hien, by asking you, where did the idea for the documentary come from?
Actually, I was always interested in the theme of growing up in two cultures, like, the Vietnamese part and also the German part. So in my studies, I also made some small works, like audio works or also paintings about my parents. And when I talked with Tim about it, he was coming up with the idea also to make a movie about it. So and we are a couple. Maybe that's also interesting to know. Yeah.
So Tim, how did you decide to collaborate on this then? Were you really interested in the story too?
Yeah, I think it all started when he had introduced me to our parents, and I saw firsthand how their life is like in between, the world here in Germany and at the same time in front of the screens. And so when I heard that he had this interest to tell something, and I was feeling like, oh, this is a very interesting topic for a documentary, we decided to give it a go and try to do a documentary. Yeah.
And Hien, was it difficult to share the director role, or did that sort of happen organically? How was that, sharing that job?
I think it was actually, it worked really well because, I mean, Tim is not speaking any word of Vietnamese, so we have to share it. And it was also good because in some situations as a daughter, it was difficult for me to direct them in the way I want to have it. So Tim could do it better, maybe also with his non-Vietnamese existing language skills. So we didn't understand it all, and so we could really share our our directing. So that was okay for me. Yeah.
And Tim, do you think that you ended up with the film that you set out to make, or did it change along the way? Is Mind Vietnam the film that you thought you would have all along, or were there surprises on the way?
I think there were a lot of surprises because what Ian mentioned, I think, not really applied here, that we could somehow like direct the story. It didn't really work because we were kind of like visitors of their world and just showed how they live. We had the decision to do this direct cinema approach, and with that comes like the thing that we need to listen to what their life is about. So we started to make more a story about them being in these online karaoke worlds, and it ended up being the story of this couple with two ideas of where to live the end of their lives. So I think it was a journey on itself to do this film. Yeah, we never had this idea at the beginning, and it just came to us.
And Hein, what really struck me about the film was how intimate it is. It opens on that sequence of home movie footage when you're very young and the couple are very young, and then we see so much of them in their everyday lives. We really are pulled into your family. Did you find that kind of hard in a way? How did you manage to direct your parents? Was it difficult?
I think at first it was also we also asked them whether it would be okay to make a documentary about them, but due to the fact that they really like live with the cameras all the time, it was also kind of okay for them to have the camera presence, like the big camera presence there. And the intimacy was growing, or was like going better when we really shared everything together. We all were also sad when my auntie died, and so the intimacy is of course was also challenging, but we just spent a lot of time together, so I think that was also good for the movie. And the decision that I was also part of the movie at first, maybe it was also something with me. I was like, oh, should it should I be there too? But then, yeah, it makes a difference because people can identify with my family and also with me as themselves, maybe.
And did your parents want to shape the story at any point, Hien, or did they just sort of give you free rein to do what you wanted to do with it?
Yeah, it was. Of course, you have like some points you want to do with them, and also like trying to tell them what to do. It's like we as like directors want to shape it, but there were like, yeah, they give us like free range, but yeah, so but we gave them some space to shape it also. So the dialogues are really natural, and it just came like surprisingly. So in some way, they shaped a lot of things in the documentary, like accidentally, but not knowing because of that. But that's why it's so real.
Yeah. And Tim, I really liked that scene where I think Bei is vacuum cleaning in the apartment, but Tam is talking to her brother about the rebuilding the house after the storm. And there's a scene where he tells her to come and look at something or come and talk to the brother, and she just continues vacuum cleaning. And I thought it was such a powerful scene because it kind of captured visually and it captured in action something that was a little bit abstract, you know, at the moment where their relationship maybe starts to go obviously in different directions. Was that a challenge to tell this story visually?
Yeah, I think at first, I think that's a very important scene because it's a starting point of their conflict in a way. Like for the first time, them as a unit gets into separate directions, which more and more come then to this, I think, also very powerful balcony scene where they then really talk about their conflict. I think the hardest part of doing this kind of style in documentary is that you have to be at that moment in the room, and when she's vacuum cleaning and she enters the door, you need to like directly turn around because that moment was just 15 seconds in total, you know. So I think that's why it's also like we had to go there many times and spend some time, like a lot of time with them, just to have this one moment where everything works out, because it is so important for the viewer in this kind of style to really understand it emotionally and visually in a symbolic way, and you need to find the symbol for that, you know. So yeah, but
And I was struck as well, Tim, about how much, you know, there's a lot of screens in the documentary as well, you know, the home movie footage, your own filming, the karaoke. Was it difficult to keep that visually interesting, or how did you think about that kind of from a directorial point of view?
I think first of all, of course, it's very. We thought about it a lot because this is like this idea everybody has that screens are not very cinematic at all, and there's so many films that really avoid these kind of things. But it's for us, it was really not true because like screens dominate our daily life, right? And if you avoid them, you show a different thing, not the reality itself. So we knew we wanted to show the screen as they are, as these black things we look into and project our emotions, our life too. So I think it was always important for us that we just talk about these different ways of showing them. But I think the real challenge was not only that it was screens, but it was always the same rooms, you know. It is a small area where they move around, and we always needed to find interesting shots to show that it's the same room, but without being full of repetitions, you know, and boring, you know.
Yeah, I think you pulled that off very nicely. Hein, you spoke earlier, you mentioned the scene with your aunt in it and how it was difficult for you to be in the documentary and also, you know, as the daughter and as the filmmaker. And those scenes are very, very strong. You know, we see your aunt when she's very ill and then also when she dies. It must have been difficult for you to use that footage. You know, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking as you were working with that particular material.
Of course, at first I was also worried that like maybe it's like too intimate or too close also. But the fact that we also we don't have any interview in that documentary, so like the talking about feelings and also about like really sad feelings is not really normal in our daily family business. And also if you see the movie, you feel like the family in Vietnam is really pragmatic about money, and they just don't know how it is to live like far away from Vietnam. And so I decided like maybe this is really essential to understand how it is to feel so not feeling complete, or all the things come together in that moment when she's sad. So she has the right also to mourn and to be sad. So yeah, it's also a strong moment to show that she's a strong woman and has the right to be sad. So yeah, and as a daughter, of course, I was also crying with her, but yeah, it was important to get that frame.
I thought it was really interesting as well because it was nearly prophetic of what a lot of us are experiencing now because of COVID, where the funerals of loved ones, we're watching them at that distance. So I think it nearly brought your mum's experience and your experience even closer for the viewer, because now we have some sense of how that feels and what it's like. So it's interesting that the film really speaks to this particular moment as well. Tell me a little bit, maybe Tim, if we come back to you about the edit, like you must have had tons of footage. How difficult was it to kind of put a narrative on it, or to see it, or to structure it?
It was quite difficult because like at first I like when I even did the camera, like Hien mentioned earlier, I didn't understand the word of Vietnamese. So we started translating and subtitling everything to get an idea with our editor, who is also Austrian and don't speak Vietnamese, to get an idea of what this story and what the scene is actually about, and then we structured it slowly, piece by piece, to find out what's the red line, and that's the beauty of I think documentary editing is like writing in a way, because you there create the story in a way, even though it's already there. And just because you talked about that moment of Hien's mother who is mourning, I think it's very important to exactly show that, because the film is about making the audience understand how it is emotionally to be maybe in a country where you're not born and you maybe think about going back. This moment is so crucial to understand this is the pain there. And if you can always intellectualize these kind of topics and say, oh yeah, it's painful, but it's so different to see how painful it is with your own eyes and identify with a person for 60 minutes and then go through this. I think that was so important of this film, to make all these topics we at the moment talk a lot, but a lot about, emotionally understandable, to get closer, to people who live through these kind of things,
Yeah, and I think the film achieves that very beautifully. There's such honest moments in it. That's a testimony both to the characters in the documentary and to your filmmaking with it. I'm thinking in particular of the balcony scenes with Tam, where he talks about his own kind of pain and discomfort around all of it. It's really revealing. So just to lastly then, tell me a little bit about how you both feel about how the film finishes. We're left, it's unclear to me. When we go back to the home movie footage right at the end, it's unclear as to what happens with the couple in the end. Was that intentional, Tim? And maybe Hien can tell us a little bit about what does happen in the end.
I think it's intentional in a way that for me, it is answered, because I see that there's a kid coming, and that as grandfather and mother, you have responsibilities here. And like Hien's father also in the documentary then talks and says like, maybe we can rent the house. So he's like, everything he does is distancing himself more and more from Vietnam. But the end, when he's back on the balcony, shows you, even though he maybe closes this chapter and he's distancing himself from Vietnam, the melancholy, the pain will stay with him. He will not get fully happy in the new place, because his desire to Vietnam will never fade. And I think that's what the ending shows you. Like, that's also this song, which in a way has this melancholic feeling, which can sum up for me the whole film. And yeah, makes you, I think it's very honest to that you will always stuck between two countries then.
And Hien, tell me a little bit about the decision to use the home movie footage again at the end. Like, it really bookends the documentary really nicely. It's there at the start, it's there at the end. What was the kind of decision making or thinking behind going back to that footage?
It was also nice to show that my father was also filming everything in the beginning. So he has like also affection for cameras, and just to show the family like far away how it is to live in his new home. So yeah, it was also to emphasize maybe that it didn't change a lot, even although it's like 30 years afterwards. To make clear also that there's no black and white in the decision or in the way of life of living in two different countries. So and then also because of the whole documentary is so intimate and so personal, it's kind of also a home video then. So we also frame that from the beginning and the end to show, okay, so that's maybe our personal home video about that couple.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and I have no doubt but the Irish audiences are really going to enjoy the documentary. It really is a treat, and so much of the images and so much of the story stays with you long after you've watched it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.